Welcome back to the channel in Power BI, and today we continue on with learning DAX Part 2. We're going to build out our calculated columns. We're going to build out 3 calculated columns, and then we're also going to build our first measure. Remember, calculated columns calculate row by row, and they take up additional data space because they are actually on the line by line item, whereas a measure is reusable, and a measure is not calculated until it's put into a visual or used inside another measure. So we're going to be in part 2 of learning DAX. Part 1, we imported the data and built out the relationships. Part 2, we're going to add some calculated columns and our first measure in Power BI. Starting to build out the DAX expressions. Welcome back to this series of videos on learning DAX. In video 1, we talked about importing the data. In video 2, we are going to start working on the basics of DAX, learning DAX, and the 3 different types of DAX expressions you can do are calculated columns, you can do measures, and you can do calculated tables. And we are going to go into the data view, and we have a table called order details. And order details has a unit price and it has a quantity. And when you do a new column, we are going to build out a calculated column, and the name of the new column is going to be line item total. And the syntax for the DAX is going to be starting off with the quantity in this table, and we're going to take the order details quantity, and we're going to take that times the unit price, the order details unit price, and that is going to be the line item total. And the only thing we need to do now is whenever you create a new column or a new measure, you want to format, because you will reuse measures, and when you put the formatting in, you will have it whenever you bring it up in a measure or a visual, it'll be formatted correctly. So we want to start off, we're going to put in a column, in a comma, and we are going to leave it at 2 decimals. But to make all of these formulas easier to read, since they're decimal numbers, we're going to leave it at 2 decimals, since that represents dollars and cents. So that is the first formula. We're creating a column. It's row by row context. The unit price, $53.90, times the quantity equals 431.20, and we created a new column. We've created our first calculated column in the orders discount table. Our second calculated column is going to be in the orders table, and we're going to create a new column, and this one is going to be called sales tax. And the sales tax is going to equal, we are going to take the order amount from the sales table, from the orders table, and times that by 0.05. And that will calculate a line by line total. And the new column is going to be called sales tax. And we're going to format this, and we're going to format it to 2 decimals. And what you'll notice on the right-hand side here is calculated columns will have this new symbol. It is a little matrix with a number there, and that is sales tax. That indicates that it is a calculated column. And if you expand on the menu bar, you can see the formula, which is sales tax equals order amount times 5%. So in the order details table, we've created a line item total, which is a calculated column with the little matrix sign that indicates it's a calculated column. And in the orders table, we also have created the sales tax calculated column. We continue with the calculated columns. Now, one of the business questions that you want to answer with this data set or any data set you're working with, once you're comfortable with the data, you need to know what type of questions you want to answer. And one of the line items in the orders table, when we go to the data view, is we want to know the total order total. And this order total, you'll see, has an order amount, and it has a shipping amount, and it has a sales tax amount. So the new column we want to create is called the order total. And we are going to calculate this out on a new column. And the formula will be from the orders table, we're going to take the order amount plus we're going to take the shipping amount, and then we're going to take the sales tax amount. And what this will get us is the cost of this order. So you can do addition, subtraction, and other types of math functions inside DAX, and we're going to continue to build out more calculated columns. So far, we've added 3 calculated columns, and remember with DAX, you can add measures, which are reusable functions inside Power BI or Excel when you're writing DAX. You can also use calculated columns, and you can create calculated tables. So we're going to move on. We're going to continue to make a couple more calculated columns, and then we'll move on to measures, which is really some of the best power inside DAX. We've created the 3 calculated columns, and now we can start to take a look at this data set. Remember, with the order total, we just added that calculated column, and that is the total of the sales tax plus the shipping amount plus the order amount. Now, one of the things that we want to calculate eventually is the total amount of sales tax we're collecting, and we're also going to want to calculate the total amount of shipping, and then we're also going to want to have a separate calculation for the order amount, and that's what we're going to create this time. We're going to use the calculated column inside the orders table, and we're going to create a new column called total all orders. And what this is going to be is a total, a sum, and it's going to be a sum of the entire row of the order amount. And this is going to be put into a calculated column, and then we're going to show you how to do this with our first measure. So this gets you familiar with the sum function, and basically from the column name, we are going to take the orders table, and that will give us a sum of all the orders on that line item. Now this creates it into a calculated column, and this is redundant data, and that's why we're going to show you the power of a measure. We'll format this to 2 decimals, and we'll add in the comma, but the total of all orders is $17,408,778. Now we're going to show you how to do this as a measure. We created the calculated column amount for total of all orders, and again, these are calculated columns. And so what you've done when you create a calculated column, it works. You can use this in other formulas and calculations, but it's taking up a lot of data space, and it's not optimizing your Power BI. You've added as many rows in this table, you've added the same number to that every single row. And so calculated columns are row context dependent. Now measures, and we're going to create our first measure by going to our measure table, and we're going to create a measure that does the same thing. It calculates the same amount, but we are going to calculate it out by using a measure this time, and we're going to call this total order amount. And the difference is we're going to use a measure that is row, that calculates based on a column rather than a row. So a calculated column based it on the row, we're going to use the sum, and all we're going to take now, it's asking, the syntax in blue is asking for a column name. So we want from the orders table, we want the, we actually want from the orders table, we want the order amount. And that is the table, and the syntax is the table first and then the column. So the order amount is the column and the orders is the table. So all we need to do is use a parentheses to close that out. Now, if we want to format that with good DAX formatting, we will close that out by adding in formatting your DAX and then close out the parentheses. And now we have a total order amount. And we can use this multiple times in different places. So to show you how this measure works, if we go to the report view, we can create a card, and this card will put in this total order amount measure, and we get that total 17 million. We will calculate that out to 2 decimal plots, and we get 17.41 million. When we go to the orders table, we get the calculated column amount, 17.408 million. So it's the same number, but the measure is reusable, and that is the power of doing a measure. So that's it for part 2. We start in DAX with calculated columns. We built our first measure. If you haven't seen the part 1 of this, where we show you how to import data and also how to set up the relationships. Remember, your data Power BI workflow, you bring in your data, then you build your relationships, then you build your calculated columns and measures, and we're on step number 3. The final step is building your visualizations in the Power BI workflow. So make sure to watch video 1, and video 3 will go into more measures and how to use some additional measures in your DAX learning.